You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go ahead and do it right now before we get going and I forget. Let's go ahead and bust out Notepad. Sense of danger. Crawling. We'll get into that. Oh, my keyboard. I do something weird where I keep toggling it between languages. I've got 3 languages on this keyboard. It's a pain in the butt. Crawling. All right. Traps? You like traps? I'm gonna jot some of these down because you know how I like ramble all over the freaking place. Aggro management. Then we can tackle them as we go and I'll have a list so they won't just get lost here. Random spawn named bosses. Mobs. Random spawn named mobs and bosses. And is that mainly because you want the loot randomized, or do they really all perform that differently? And Turk, did you see the new TLC announcement? TLC. Jeez. TLP. TLC. Singing about waterfalls. The TLP for was it Mischief? The new server coming up? I'm very curious about it. I mean, I think I posted in Discord. I think I'll probably be in there for a couple weeks and that's it. But it'll be fun. Project is going good, Apothic. A lot of sort of behind the scenes stuff lately, so you haven't seen me in here doodling in Blender much. So traps, and I'll add on there locked or illusionary doors. That's a good one. Dungeon should have a few safe spots. A few. I'll bring it back over here. Well, let me hit save real quick, and we'll name this Dungeons Notes from Stram. Sorry, Brian. I was like, hey, before you leave, and then I completely just went off. You're used to it though. Few save spots. Reliance on other players. So I'll get that one. If I miss any of these and you don't hear me read it off or whatever, feel free to repeat it. Because each one of these in and of itself can be like a decent topic in my opinion. For us to rant about for a while. Locked doors we got. Traps we got. What else do we have? Something interesting, but not something I'd want to do consistently. Seems like something interesting. Oh, some of the things that are coming out here. Let's see. Oh, Zoidberg, are you talking about the new TLP? Let's go. It's funny that you said that, Anturg, you weren't aware of it. There you go. Also certain spellcasting abilities for bosses. So let's just say distinct boss abilities. We'll throw that in there. Worst versus reward, dangerous going deeper. So more RV or as you go deeper. Yeah, then that hits on Dan Bin Boo's. What we got then is internal progression. Interesting POIs, rooms to sit in. Interesting POIs / rooms to sit in. Ryan. Death touch on every mob. Mob variety. Paying your shaming kerns right now. First of all, I want to say, way to come straight out of the gate with all sorts of great feedback. Hey everybody. Constant tension. Constant tension. I feel like there was another one up here that I missed. What about locked traps? More combat related, but directional and range based AoEs should weigh in the... So... Well, I'll do the full thing here. Let's say abilities. Let's generalize a little bit. Should... blah, 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 blah. Where'd that go? Where'd you go? Essentially, the room design should factor it in, but I'm trying to find it. Way on the room tunnel design. Alright, should... Way on the room tunnel design. Cool. Architecture that tells a story. Nice. Some of the best dungeons also have raid targets in them. Think Perma, Soul B. Also have raid. This can probably all be summed up by saying creating some contextual storytelling for zones. Well, you know what? We'll keep that as a separate note. I think it's good as a standalone note as well. Death touch is a wonderful mechanic. Don't you tell the former spell guy whether or not death touch is a bad mechanic. I'm gonna have to scroll up. You guys are kicking out way too much good shit. So give me a moment. Did I already get? Yeah, architecture that tells a story. And also, please keep in mind that this is Notepad, so ignore my bad spelling. I'm not getting assistance here. This may be a duplicate, but we'll keep it. Dungeon. No, actually, I think it's fair. This is the new one. Dungeon, story, and lore. Non-linear. Oh, what's getting even worse is I'm like not even looking at the screen with the text on it, so I'm just gonna be typing in chicken scratch. Non-linear dungeons like BRD and WoW. Saturated hues. Good dungeons have random holes that drop you 2 floors and make you regret it. I'm actually, it's funny, the thing I have in the background here, that was one of my priorities. It doesn't have much going on here, but it definitely has a hole. So let's see. Moosey, thank you for the follow. First one of the day. So did I miss anything up above these ones that I'm looking at? No, there's Ryan with his death touch. And let's see. Progressive cycles. What I mean by this is follow a specific chain of killing certain mobs named further cycle to get special named spawn. Ooh. Thank you very much. I did not send that message to Nick earlier when I was thinking about it. Nick, I had a thought on something similar to this earlier. Please don't let me forget it. Maybe I'll put a little asterisk by this one, so I totally won't remember why I have 3 asterisks here later, but progressive spawn cycles, I think is a fair summary of what you want to do. Oh my god, I'm still scrolling. Alright, everybody pause for 1 second. Just pause. I'm not going to catch up. Good dungeons have random holes. We did that one. But did I type it in? Well, I'm never going to forget it. death drops. A la BB. Let's have a bard kite for 15 seconds for nose ring before we engage. Oh, talking about death touch. Use of height and design. So use of height. So slash verticality. Probably not spelled right. Is it even a boss if it has death touch? Didn't the curse have multiple death touches? And I could have sworn that was Lawrence's idea. Did I miss anything? Randomized puzzles. Jeez, that's aggressive. But I'll put it in here. Dungeon with a timer. When you start, you get a bonus if you beat it in time. Alright. Dungeon with a timer. Bonus for beating time. It's interesting because I'm glad you guys are not... I think there are some different views on definition of dungeon, or I think there's different references. Because there are definitely some things that feel very sort of instanced and crawly, dungeon crawl, versus like a EQ sort of park your ass and camp dungeon. Let's see. Alright, looks like you did pause. Alright, so let me finish catching up. In regards to traps, trigger door that opens traditional foes onto the party is favorite. So, trap door that drops foes on the party. Skill-based platforming in the dungeon. Really loved Eldon, where dungeons gave currency you could save up. Good job, Ryan, and me, and others. Oh, was it the Imp that had two? So, points rather than just pure RNG. Interesting use of the environment. Water, lava, etc. Long dungeons with mini areas that are very dangerous but have safe spot. It's funny, as soon as you started describing that, I pictured Lower Guck. It's funny because we'll bring up Lantern in a minute. I was trying to get the new Lantern to work, and I'm apparently not smart enough to do it. But I went back into the old version of Lantern Zone Viewer and went straight to Guck and was just like, it's such a sprawl. So long dungeons. Let me put in some flavor. Sprawling dungeons with safe spots. Here and there. Lots of underwater zones. Minion mobs should give you a chance to learn the basic boss mechanics before you get to them. So minion mobs prep you for boss mechanics. Monster quarters with gnome body pillows. Yes. Tyrion, was it you that gave us the catchphrase for our gnome body pillow? Gnome more sleepless nights? Was that you? I was trying to figure out who provided that the other night. Yeah, Ryan, we're gonna make some merch. Hopefully nobody beats us to it, but we're gonna make an actual gnome body pillow to scale. It's fine, Dave. We've got safe spots, but still. We added some more on there. Having one-way zone ins and specific zone out locations. Nice, Nick. One-way zone ins and specific zone out locations. Sorry the text is going to be so small on your screen, but on the good side you won't be able to read my spelling errors. Areas of safety and respite we have, usually punctuating branching areas. Yeah, but let's say, we'll add this on. Usually punctuating branching areas. Cool, you guys have done a wonderful job so far of setting up my next GDC talk. I'll just be like, look at all this shit I thought up. I've never done a GDC talk. I'm pretty sure I never will. Damn, I'm making chat huge on my screen this time. Just keep up with you guys. Having a way to leave at the very end instead of backtracking. Big dirty deed. I like it. Having a way to leave at the end instead of backtracking. Am I remembering the throne room incorrectly? Couldn't you, in lower go, couldn't you go out? What was it, lower go? You go out the back? It's a huge quest in the world that gives you some sort of good clicky item like J-Boots, but requires you to finish or get to the bottom of every dungeon of the game for an item drop or pickup. Alright, so key quest components dropped in the dungeon. Gnome and Kite Shield body pillows coming soon. Did we discuss Kite Shield or did you just come up with that? You get a bonus for that. What else do we have? We've got refueling points with interactable objects that give a minor boon to recovery. It's interesting. We talked a little bit about that months ago. We were talking about that for Project In, like little campfires and things like that. Tyron, let me write your name down next to it. Tyron. Boom. Now I know. I will never forget it. I love that you haven't looked at any of these suggestions and said no yet. Really should see how far we can push you. You can push me all you want. I mean, I've looked at these and thought no. Most of them. All of them. Just no to everything. All of this sounds fun. I'm the fun police. What do I mean by RVR as you go? A risk versus reward. I was like, did I spell reward wrong? Is it spelled with a W? I've been in Germany too long. Risk versus reward, T-Con. Let's see. How about super tiny dungeon that you have to be a gnome or shrink to get around? Oh, I thought you were going somewhere else with that. We were talking about like 2-room, 3-room dungeons. Yes, a pillow, Ryan. I did say gnome merch. What's up, Homestead? All right, so super tiny dungeon, but not the one that we've been talking about. You mean you actually have to be small, so that you have to be a gnome. The whole freaking gnome zone should be this way. Gnome or shrink for... Oh my god, that's such a... Oh, I'm gonna have to catch up in a minute. Damn, I'm falling behind because of this one. Because I just pictured like even this tiny ass door. Like you can't even zone in. It's just small. Oh, platforming section you can fail and have to redo part of the dungeon to get back. All right, let's add that because you put platforming up here. Skill-based platforming can fail and have to... What? Where'd it go? Redo. Yeah, when I was looking at some of the Pantheon stuff, it kind of seemed like it's platforming. I was like, where the hell do you fall to when you screw up? Get the resume bullet points. Man, you know what? I'm really hoping that we can make this company work so that I can stop with the resume bullshit. And if for whatever reason, God forbid it doesn't work, I think I'm just gonna try again. I just don't want to work for a company again. That's gonna require me to interview or whatever. What about Dungeon Reverse? Go jump down a waterfall to the last boss and have to fight your way back out. Alright, I'll put it on here. Dungeon in reverse. Kill boss and flee. Okay. Dungeons that have alternating types of monsters. Oh, I was just thinking about this one. This is great. Day-night, the day-night cycle and stuff like that, but in a dungeon. So we'll just say day-night cycle style pop changes in the dungeon. That I think this thought was actually what led me to the cycling progressive spawn cycle thought earlier today. They should force you to slow down and pay attention to the environment and not be meaningless grind. Alright, so force slow progression but not meaningless grind. Excuse me. No, you can't get out of Gawk? Did I remember that wrong? I thought there was a teleporter in Gawk. Droga had a cool thing where there's a drop down at the beginning. You had to go all the way around this big circle to get back out. Yes. Yes. And so on this or Droga example. Increased mob patrols or stronger mobs in areas where players commonly kill or farm. Maybe updated monthly. Basically, monsters trying to defend home better over time. This is interesting. We've talked about some stuff on this front, and we've also talked about how to potentially factor in some play as a monster in this area as well. So increased mob patrols or stronger mobs in areas that players commonly camp slash farm. Dungeons, got that. Interesting mix of interior and exterior. Yeah, always nice. Kazakh Black Bro. Honestly, it didn't seem like it, but you know, it doesn't really look like it that much, but it's Unrest. So TT, BB, Unrest. What else we got here? Mazes. Idea of getting keyed or tuned just into a dungeon. Ah, good point. Keying slash attunement to enter the dungeon, or you just have to be small. No to everything. Oh, you're laughing at my earlier comment. I wasn't joking. Think attunement keying should be for gearing up every 10 levels or so. How should I write that? I'm curious. So, and then I'll just put an arrow here that's like, which keyboard am I using? All right. Then we'll say, yeah, Realm versus Realm. I figured some people would think that, but I remembered. I knew I'd remember. Leads to tiered gearing up progression. Cool, cool, cool. No worries, Dave. You actually supplied all the platforming stuff, so don't apologize. I was just adding on to the thing that you had already provided. Key codes on a door that change every hour and they drop off mobs. Oh, interesting. Key codes or keys that change. How about over time? We'll generalize it a little bit. Which drop off of mobs. Can we sell poop socks? That was the joke that I think I mentioned yesterday in Discord for merch. So I'm down. Oh my god, why isn't there a sock with like a little poop on it? There you go. Little embroidered poop on a sock. We've EQ merch. Has anybody done that already? Don't even think about it. We're getting the trademark lawyers on that right now. Let's see. Jasmine's like, what are you talking about, socks of poop? Oh, we'll fill you in. It's an EverQuest thing. Should be full of mysteries, may take multiple visits to unlock certain sections. Full of mysteries takes multiple visits slash sections. Sessions, not sections. Sessions to unlock everything. Oh my goodness. 34 solid minutes of good ideas. Wailing Caverns and WoW had a tiny jump, but that was trivial. People failed all the time and it was hilarious. Summon points in a dungeon where you can summon people, come replace others. Interesting. Summon points instead of like call the hero or whatever. Summon points in the dungeon to backfill the group, etc. Dungeon that you cannot gate slash port out of. Doors that require buttons, toggle switches, and other parts of the dungeon. Oh, nice. Doors that require interaction with buttons, toggles, switches, etc. in other parts of the dungeon. What do we got? One-way dungeons. Once you get past point of no return, you need to progress to the end or some other exit. Horse King, I think... Let me see what we got up here. I think... We got some... we got one-way zone in, specific zone out, so let's just put in a new one. Points of no return within the dungeon. Yeah. 1 second. Jasmine's getting ready to go for a run. Well, a very brisk walk by my standards. There you go. Dungeons with towns like Runny Eye, Ashaw, you're a person after our own hearts. Dungeons with towns like Runny Eye. We've been calling those monster cities. I think we even list those on our website. Never having to interview again is definitely a perk. I'm so like fingers crossed. I would love to quasi retire into just having a nice, wonderful small company and not having to interview again. Oh shit, yeah, Control S. Good one, thank you, Nick. And that's such a Nick thing to think of, too. We were just talking about that, right? In my opinion, dungeons should expand world lore in some way. Dungeons should expand the world's lore in some way. Let's see. You're using Blender layout environment. I need to see how you're doing this. Keep in mind, I am absolutely not an environment artist. I've just started doing 3D art for this project. I have no experience. We're doing this to just build some placeholder stuff, but we'll get back to it. Monty, I'm so glad you said that. I'll go straight to Monty's and then I'll look around and make sure I didn't miss anything. I was literally just thinking this one because of the Dungeons with Towns. We're also thinking the inverse, which is... oh, you're talking about the dungeon. My bad. I thought you meant dungeons being near port cities. This is... yeah, this is near... this is a dungeon that would be linked in our proof of concept little area. It's right off that little desert zone. But let me make that note since I thought you said it. Dungeons near / under, hint, major ports and cities. I like the idea of having dungeons, like really high level dungeons, even ones that you may have to, you know, come back to after a year or two to really start to get into, right under the major cities, right? I love it when there's dungeons under player cities. It feels very D&D to me. Let's see. I'm gonna scroll down. Oh my god, guys, sorry, I'll catch up. I'll stop flapping my lips and see if I can catch up. Dungeon or shit. Merchants in the dungeons. Dungeons with faction impacts. And let's add in there. Example, live, dead, gawk. Dungeon where after you beat certain enemies, get some sort of permanent bonus when in the dungeon, like speed increase and money drops. So, permanent bonus of some sort after beating, in quotes, or progressing past some point in the dungeon. Organic cage-free poop socks only. I am that far behind. Apologies. Hardcore dungeon where super loot drops but your corpse can't be dragged and you can't be rezzed. Permadeath super loot dungeon. Fair enough. Outdoor dungeons. So like gorge. Yep. King Zorba to bees. How's someone going to implement this stuff? It will take decades, Kappa. I think what we got though is a really nice... some of the stuff is just not going to be appropriate for our game necessarily. But I think these things group up in some nice logical ways, and maybe we'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, I don't know that we implement all of it, but there's some really fun stuff in here. Dungeons with dungeons, top frag dad. I like the way you said that. Dungeons with dungeons. And I've been thinking of this as within dungeons, because you know, it's that idea of there being areas or areas or entirely different zones within, like if you look at Gawk and Lower Gawk, and unfortunately was there any like Eldon zone into like deepest Gawk within Gawk? I don't remember, but yeah, it's that idea that, you know, way later in life you may come back and blast by some newbies that see these impressive people going into that really just gnarly, you never want to go there part of the dungeon. Can't read Runny Eye without thinking run, yay. I don't get the reference. Though one of the guys in our guild, his name shortened was Yeye. His name was Yeud, I believe, in the Dark Exile. Alright, so Kinster, got to be careful with points of no return. Difficulty getting back out is more friendly way to handle that, in my opinion. Thinking like, say, a group unknowingly ends up in one of those areas without a class that can teleport and they're just effed. It's kind of like a weird VP kind of model, or they have a way out. It's more challenging and difficult. Yeah, I think when we're thinking about the actual reality of implementation, probably go more that route. How about dungeons that explicitly break the rules of what makes a good dungeon? Bad dungeons are okay too when used sparingly. We'll put that in there. Bad dungeons are okay too. Don't feel bad. Bad guys. Having a really difficult area to get to that opens like an ancient crypt. Takes keys from a remote location elsewhere to get in. That's a well dungeon that you had to jump down these rocks, the lava pool to get to molten core. So should chat be slowed for this? I just need to talk less. All right, so Monty, difficult areas gonna open. So essentially summarize, would that be that'd be sort of a keying, right? I think we may have that. Multiple entrances. I'm gonna grab just because I saw it. You didn't mean permadeath. You meant you would have to get back to your corpse somehow. Okay. Let me find where I put in permadeath. It's up there. Ah. It'll be fine. We'll know. Different states, conditions being activated, different parts of the dungeon. That one we do have. Based on what groups, individual. That we don't have. So, active groups in different parts of the dungeon. Trigger an event. This actually gives me some ideas for cartography because we were talking about it before. Yeah, we may have to save that one for, so keep thinking about that one. We'll bring that up once the steam wears off here. Dungeon where you have to spend too much time in it, the mobs recognize you and just run away. Okay, so mobs recognize the threat if you stay too long and run away. It's like a respawn blocker. Sometimes other factions of NPCs are invading the same dungeon, have a camp set up that provides unique stuff. Alright, so other NPCs come in, invade, set up camp, and provide unique benefits. Quests, merchants, etc. Or make it harder. How about that? We'll throw a little addition on there. Planes of Power had a cool approach with the dungeons within dungeons concept. You mean like Plane of Nightmare? And oh no, there was actually other dungeons that were dungeons within dungeons, but I can't remember them offhand. Maybe Ryan remembers. Let's see. Feel like I'm missing some, but I am. Oh, I didn't click down. Control F. Oh, there we go. Computers are hard. Just really constrained? How do we do that? Constrained CR rules? Oh, I get it now, Dave. Secret entrances or keyed Key like undead strat, which is the servant's interest, if you remember correctly. So, secret alternate and or keyed entrances. So what I actually want to do for this dungeon that's behind me right now on Blender is I would love for this door to get in to only open. You can always leave, but you can only get in at night. That's the only time the door actually kind of reveals itself and shimmers and you're able to enter it. Just to show off like the ability to have different conditions unlock or reveal, even though I know people data mine it and find it, but reveal the entrance to some of the areas. Consumable, spawnable, placeable dungeons from quest items. That's an interesting one. Consumable, spawnable, placeable dungeons. Oh my god, my spelling's getting worse. From quest items. Iridite dungeon, time space continuing issue. You can't go back, only forward. Interesting. Can't go back, only forward. We'll put it on here. I missed one up here. Dungeon where healing does damage, damage does healing. So healing does damage, damage does healing. Cats and dogs living together. Make it require different classes, not just rogues for lockpick, but maybe each class able to do something exclusive. So it requires different classes. I.e. need to res NPC that gives you something. Lore for specific races. Oh my goodness, my spelling. Specific classes, races. Example, bosses whisper. Or whisper to you or react differently. Depending on secret areas, make it something like rogues have sense hidden or something. Rogues can detect hidden. Lots of hidden to detect or sense. If you got architecture skill or spycraft or all that sort of stuff, you can notice different things. We want to get silly with some of the skills, and I think this is an example of it. Innovation had one. Trials were sort of like that in Justice. Yeah, it was just, it's funny because Bunny and I were talking a little bit about planes earlier, and I was thinking of Justice because it was just such a random size and sort of structure relative to other ones. Mobs with dynamic locations. So it has a chance to spawn in different groups, camps, non-constant player number in single dungeon with static reward. More people you bring, everyone gets less stuff, but it becomes easier. Cookie Monster, when I catch up, you'll have to elaborate on that because I may be thinking of what you mean wrong. You should download Notepad++. You should never use Notepad. Oh, come on. Well, you just said it as well, so that's 2 votes. That's so sophisticated, though. I usually just use Google Docs, to be honest with you. Damn it. You know how long it's been since I've had Notepad++, double plus? Probably since I was on EQ. You need at least 1 procedurally generated dungeon for science. Okay, at least 1 Procedurally close enough. Generated dungeon. Or forest if you want to go to Zelda route. Dungeon where there's branches that can only be accessed by specific classes, so your group makeup will decide what you can explore. Okay, so different branches can only be unlocked by a specific class. Procedurally generated dungeon, maybe it gets destroyed and respawns differently. That's interesting. Respawns different or differently? Differently? English is hard. Each week or whatever. So you guys are back up on the play with rewards to get that's kind of funny. A mix of classes helping each other. So some of the examples. Even if it's just lame, enchanter spell opens this door. You have to beguile it with some sort of an illusion. Fire ice have to be cast on to open it. Captain Planet style summoning of the final boss. Alright. Kinser, throw the cartography idea in Discord before the idea escaped. Also, yeah. Oh. Text pad? Was that it? I just remember it being a lot more sophisticated. Differently. Alright, then we're good. Dungeon that requires X people each stand on pressure plates to summon bosses. Interesting. Dungeon that requires, or dungeon or POI that requires multiple people to do something at once. Example, stand on pressure plate to summon boss. Trade skill interactions that give access to certain areas. All right. Skill or other skill interactions that provide access to certain areas or bosses. Ooh. Jewel crafter makes a gem that fits into statue. Were you thinking of the, was it the Dungeon Master's Guide or the Player's Handbook? Dungeon Master's Guide, where they're prying the gem out of the statue's head, but in reverse. It's funny, in Star Stable Online, you have to, but it's just a quest. You actually don't need a trade skill to do it. You have to build a bridge to get over a gorge to unlock this other area of the game. Dave, thank you so much for your participation. You expect proof of concept by Friday? We will not fail you. Dungeon requires, you said buy and then you're throwing out more ideas. What are you doing? Dungeon that requires another item to reveal enemies or loot, like magic. Oh yes, those. Reveals ghosts. I've been wanting to do ghost shit for so long. Oh. Sweet D Willie, thank you for the raid. We are out of control right now. Look at all of these good ideas people have been throwing in here for the last 58 minutes. I'm still just catching up. Alright, so Dave's last idea, I gotta get it written down. What's up, Phil? Dungeon that require. I can actually see the bottom of my chat at the moment because my chat is the entire monitor. Alright, so let me go back up. Dave's was requires another item to reveal enemies or loot, like a magic lantern. Or, and this was an item I was trying to get put in a different game, ghost glasses. So you can see ghosts. If you go in there, you don't have your ghost glasses on, you get the shit kicked out of you. You don't even know what's going on. You can't see anything. You don't even see the name tags. You're just getting dead. Come back later. Dungeon requires you to be drunk. Dungeon, why not? We'll throw it on here. Requires you to be drunk. I'm assuming in game. Let's see. If there's no fast travel, maybe have difficult dungeons that give you certain areas to port to. Like the 3 pipes in Super Mario. I like that one. Super tough dungeon provides interesting ports as a reward. Kinda. Let's see, where are we at? Neil said, I feel like trade skill impact on PvE stuff is underutilized for anything but consumables for most games. It's true. In that one VOD when we were talking about diplomacy in Vanguard, I actually liked the idea. I know Fisher pointed out the problems with it and stuff, but I like the idea of you having to take like the diplomat down to deal with like the boss of the dungeon or whatever. Dungeon that requires you to be naked somehow. Alright. And that was hot tub dungeon where you're just in the hot tub and collect flutes. Here's all the craze. If we combine the drunk dungeon and hot tub dungeon, then it sounds like a decent vacation. And he's finally really out. Maybe one where the player needs to solve a puzzle while other group members defend player multiple waves. What's up, cookies? Boss / event in which player needs to be defended by group as they do a thing. Certain spells, abilities, etc. that are only available by venturing deep into the dungeon. Can't be sold. I'm gonna add on that because I'm gonna assume that they're just not available other places, otherwise it's diminished the value. Could do secret tunnels instead of ports too, like a secret. Ooh, that's interesting. Secret. We'll put it back up here since it's not that far away. Or secret tunnels to interesting places. Control S. Hash pipe. What's up, buddy? Good to see you. Thank you for being our friend for 10 months. Nick said, I have an idea for a quest that requires you to be drunk. In game or real life? Assume dungeon that requires you to be drunk. All right, I've just caught back up to where I was. We got it, Phil. Everyone knows about dungeons where you have to brute force yourself through to complete. But hear me out. How about crafting dungeons? I think Nils is in your camp. I like the idea of having a puzzle to progress further, unlock a secret, but not required to complete with extra lore quests, cosmetic opportunities. So let's just, because I think we've covered a lot of that, but what we didn't put on there is additional cosmetic options based on stuff listed above. Because we talked about like different best in slot items and things like that having multiple variations with just like more cosmetic variations. So instead of just your flowing black silk sash, you can get like the really fancy purple one or whatever. So I think we can link that into some stuff. Where are we? Quasi or pseudo dungeons where it isn't a separate zone but a higher difficult area and some outdoor zone or city players would already be visiting. Yes, but we'll put it on the list, but for sure. That's something Nick's very passionate about and we've been talking about it a good bit. So let's just call them quasi now I'm starting to spell dungeons wrong. Dungeons that are extensions or areas within existing put outdoors a note, outdoor zone. Love you too, dude. Things are going good. How are you doing, Hashpipe? We gotta catch up outside of this chaos at some point. No rent items from dungeons. You need to advance to be. I like that. No rent items used to advance within the dungeons. If we start to, if we get like to a point where we're calming down, I can go back through the list a bit for people that are just coming in. Jump maps we got. RP dungeons. I'm assuming roleplay dungeons. Like that if you're using a mount or something else during the dungeon, like a ride a dragon, cannons on a ship. So mount type mechanics in dungeons. Like minecarts, if you're going all the way back to like old school Indiana Jones game. You said dragon, cannons on ship. Let's see. Dungeon slowly fills with toxic gas. So, time-based conditional variability. I'm sure I'll understand that later. Gathering dungeons. Nick, explain. Egon said Twitch chat is overpowered. You couldn't get this many ideas in any meeting of the minds in one company. No, it's I actually started to write a little article for LinkedIn about this, but then decided I didn't want to write an article for LinkedIn. But yeah, I mean, the interactions that we have regularly when we're talking about this stuff, even when we're playing like EQ or whatever, and we're just playing, we're bullshitting. There's so many just great ideas, or we'll throw something out there and you guys are like, nah, that's weak. And then we know, right? Like, that's the reason why we're doing the approach that we're doing. I think one of the things I've really want to make clear, maybe in a future update on our Project N site, is just to tell people that are maybe discovering the stream for the first time. Maybe they saw like the Massively OP article or something, or someone put an article on a a Polish MMORPG website, and now Poland is like the 3rd biggest visitor to our website. Like apparently those dudes are super into like old school MMORPGs as well. But yeah, like the people that are just coming in, I don't think they realize, and maybe some of you don't realize, like we're so early in development. When you look at it, you're like, man, this game's really early. But it's because we just from day one have been interacting with the community very openly, and I think in the long term it's going to save us time. So let me get caught back up again. Dungeons that require you to pull a key that releases water or lava. Didn't steal that idea from Great Mole. Oh man. How do I want to say that? We'll say mobile app clickbait ad dungeons. Keys and lava, y'all. What about penalties for incorrectly solving a puzzle? Sure. Penalties for incorrectly solving a puzzle or some other condition. I'm glad you're decent, Hashpipe. Are you getting paid for this? You'll take your payment in the form of Dogecoin. No. I always say Doge too. I guess it's supposed to be Doge. I don't know, man. Oh, I just prefer Doge. No, I thought the opposite would happen. I thought you'd give us a shitload of good ideas and you'd throw us bits or something, right? So we can implement them. I actually don't have any Dogecoin. Got a bunch of other weird ones, but not that. How dare I? How dare you? This dungeon is burning. I shouldn't even be here. Dungeons with mob infighting. I like it. Mob infighting within the Dogen. Evolving dungeons. Evolving dungeons. Like bringing minus Tirith back to life. That's a really interesting one, right? Because we've talked about seasons and stuff in the game. It's like we'd be willing to exchange a lot of fidelity in order to be able to provide something like seasons over time, that, you know, recurring seasons. But it'd be interesting to see like a dungeon that's slowly changing over the life of the server. Excuse me. Okay, gathering dungeon like Stardew. Nice. You got to go in there. Like the trade skill folks are really wanting to have some protection as they go down. Deadly traps that can be disarmed or need to do things to avoid them. Rule, I think we've got that one. Speedrunning dungeons, we've got that as well up there. I think that was one of Dave's. Remote dungeons, which are hard to get back from. So very remote dungeons that are hard to get to and return. Expedition style. I'm very hung up on the idea of expeditions. Neuropolis, there you go. Now you can catch up on who we are. Rare gathering materials in hard dungeons, where people have to complete difficult dungeons together. Just yep. Now, is that going to be different than a gathering dungeon? I guess we can make it different. Put a note on here. Keep it separate. Rare nodes and materials in the dungeons. You guys have been hammering out ideas for a solid hour and 13 minutes. You're amazing. Mushroom looking guy that awards a prize or lets you know the prize you seek in another dungeon. That'd be a bit groundbreaking. Dungeons with zone-wide debuffs and buffs. So zone-wide debuffs and buffs. Buffs. The item you're looking for is in a different dungeon. Siege, attack, or defend be a good dungeon? Let's write it down. Siege, attack, or defend for the dungeon. Tight dungeons, yes. Old school EQ. That's honestly, it's one of our big inspirations for how to create like nice mood in dungeons. Dojins with actual doge mobs. Is this Dojin instance? Much monks. Please don't have weird Christmas holiday tie-ins to your seasons. Yeah, it's an interesting one, right? Like, you don't want to be too cheesy with it. And I know why it happens. I know why it happens, especially in games that have cash shops. But I guess if we're subscription based, the only thing we'd be looking at, I mean, honestly, as long as our retention is good and we're not seeing an increase in churn over any given point, like whether you spend a lot of your Christmas break in our game or not, doesn't really matter as long as you continue subscribing through Christmas. So, yeah, I don't know that we need like weird Christmas events and stuff in game, but we want to have weird holidays and shit in game that are part of our lore, right? Dungeons in which if you die, you go to hell and must best the devil in fiddling competition to get res. All right, Phil. All right. Why am I spacing on his name? Devil went down to Georgia. Charlie Daniels. The Charlie Daniels dungeon. Do actual seasons, not just day-night cycle, be cool. Yeah, that's so that's on our list. Lunar cycles, seasons, day-night cycle, weather events. All sort of tapping into that. All right. Buffs. If you do moon phases, you could do tidal dungeons that only show up on low tide. Interesting. Totally wasn't even thinking about that. So, low tide tidal dungeon entrance based on lunar cycle. So one of the goals with like the day-night / lunar cycle stuff tied into revealing dungeons entrances is strictly it's 1000% the classic scene of the fellowship outside of the dungeon, right? Oh, nice, Nils. Right when I thought we were starting to run out. Slippery surfaces like slime and ice. That'll go on our environmental list we hit earlier. Green Flash Dungeon. What does that mean, Ryan? Would tight dungeons be so cramped they would limit the viability of certain weapons? Oh, probably not. I think that'd be too much for us, Grix. I think this is the first one where I've been like, nah. You know what, Grix? I take that back. I should not be saying no. This is very much a yes process. So what we're gonna change that a little bit. We're gonna say dungeon size has an impact on certain weapons or spell types. And then I'll put a note for myself. Blow. Oh man, it's been 20 years since I was in the army. Is it blowback area clear? It's been so long since I've had to worry about firing a rocket. When you're shooting like a law or an AT4, what is it that you have to say before you hit fire? Is it blowback area clear? Blowback area clear? I forget. Blowback area clear. Tank Wizard begins casting. Yeah, Swanee. So the Piers at Night is actually, I was saying earlier that this dungeon that's in the background here is one of the things I'd like to have it in for the proof of concept. So you say that after Taco Bell, to be honest. Well, you're very considerate. Dungeon with high tide, so you can actually reach. And regular dungeon with low tide, different monsters in each. So low tide tidal dungeon entrance, high tide to reach it, and tidal changes change pop. How about that? Top Frag Dad, we have got that trade skill / building dungeon concept up here a bit. For those of you that have come in a bit late, here's what we've got. We've got this list. I'll go a little slow for a second. I don't expect you to actually read them. And we're not going to read through all of them at the moment. It's just such a crazy list. So many good things. All right, so temperature or other conditions require items to survive. Yeah, so I know Pantheon's really doing a lot with that. So I think looking at what they want to do, looking at Breath of the Wild and other stuff, more recently, Valheim and things, I think that sort of gearing is interesting. Who asked for Death Touch? That was Ryan here. He's a big fan. And not even on bosses, just random things. Oh, treasure chest. Death Touch. Speak friend and enter. Is that the actual quote? Why does it sound so familiar? Why am I so bad at quotes, Nick? Hazardous items like barrels of liquor. Alright, so exploding or other hazardous objects. I'm still catching up. I'm pretty sure saying blowback area or back blast area? Blowback area? Back blast area clear? Probably changed a bunch. Yeah, I've got I was just talking to a guy I knew from the unit I was in who's I think Command Sergeant Major or something now. And yeah, it sounds like totally different. Things have changed a lot over the years. Death touch should really be rare. Like if you try to Leroy Jenkins something, it shouldn't just be a mechanic. I was kidding about putting it on treasure chest. Yeah, it's rare. PvP dungeons. That's interesting. PvP dungeons. Despite it basically being a PvE game, you go in, it's just known. That would make it an interesting dungeon. PvP dungeons, items that drop in the dungeon are lootable. You go into the dungeon, get some nice loot, and just get taken out. They take that loot off you. Bunch of mobs that blind, and when they die, spawn another mob that also dies, and each of these mobs should have boss. Okay, I was about to say. Maybe a dungeon where it's an assassination style, and that you have to kill fewer things, get more rewards. So. Assassination. Oh my good. Assassination. Yeah, there's no red squiggles. It's clearly spelled right. Style dungeon. Mission style dungeon. Cool. Got you. Impact rewards. It's so interesting because there's so many good ideas on here, but there's like a fundamental question that has to be answered that impacts so many of the ideas, which is but I'm not gonna throw it out now. If you guess, go ahead and argue about it in chat, but I think you'll be able to guess. There's a bit of functionality that if we don't include makes all of this a bit harder to do, right? It's so interesting. Go away, bug. Oh man, the light's attracting the stream light is attracting these guys. So we brought in a bunch of firewood. And didn't let it like sit outside for any amount of time. We brought it in when it was cold a few weeks ago, and it just happens to also be bug breeding season, and so we got these little funny like red and black flying wood bugs that have gotten out, and we're ushering them outside all day. There you go, Joppa. Exactly. All right, so let me catch back up. I'm done staring at these bugs. I'll usher them out later. Jasmine even got like this funny like thing. It's like a gun handle thing with like this really interesting little plastic feelers, and you can use it to kindly and gently pick up little bugs and throw them out your window, because I don't want to have to unnecessarily kill or damage bugs for no reason. It's not their fault. Term UAV was changed to UAS, and for some generals OPR, although they won't actually say it. Oh, so you've got a whole new, like, a general comes in, changes the term, and then you got to watch like which terms you're using with which generals. Keep everybody happy. That's wonderful. Get out of here, bug. Crazy guy. Monster fall damage. That's new. Hash pipe. Look at you with the generosity. Alright, so we'll put on here 2 teams to compete to kill final boss. Fun. Let's see, dungeons like Crystal Caverns, which have small town, output, factory, story content, helps facilitate travel issue. Todd, we are all over it. Got it up there a little bit. Let me see. Nope. Yeah, this is, so that's sort of that's the core of like the monster city that we list on the website. So yeah, we had some more references to some stuff related to that up there, but yep, we're in alignment there. Who misses Berserker mobs from Gauntlet Legends? You know, the guys that have the powder kegs in their bags? I just saw a video of them because I was trying to find old Gauntlet videos of like the top down, and then went down a complete Gauntlet rabbit hole and got recommendations on YouTube. And I just saw those guys in action. It's funny how the movement speed was so slow in that game. Notepad, I get it, guys. I know it has spell check. I think you mentioned it earlier. Indiana Jones, we have to whip across cracks and crevasses, run away from boulders and blow darts. All right. All right. Indiana Jones. Oh my god, I'm slowing down. It's been so many of these. Whip across. I'm trying to find it again. There it is. I was like, am I spelling it wrong? Crevasses. Dodge boulders. Darts. Etc. Alright, we got it. Yeah, so instancing versus not instancing plays a huge role in the ability to deliver some of these experiences that you're mentioning, but rather than, like, my goal was to write all of it down, right? Like, just write all of it down. There's so much fun stuff in here, because you never know, there's different ways to skin certain cats and maybe redefine some of this stuff, but there's so much great stuff in here. But yes, when you start talking about like dungeon crawl and timed runs and special mechanics and all that, instancing versus non-instancing is to me one of the first filters that pops up. Make death in dungeon more detrimental to dying in open world. Top Frag Dad, do you mean beyond just the fact that CR is probably going to be a lot harder? Is there some other penalty? Let's see. Grick says, to instance or not to instance, why not do both? Clearly not in the industry. We did both in EQ at the end of the day, right? But, you know, this also, it's become sort of a quasi-religious argument within the old school EQ classic MMO crowd, so... dungeon that cycles mobs bosses based on if certain bosses are killed, weakened, and the zone is invaded by enemies, maybe. We grabbed that one as well up there a little bit. It's a good idea. Now wait a second, one thing that we didn't do is or was it... Yeah, I'm just going to write it down again. There's no reason not to. So... bosses cycle based on if certain... bosses slash pop cycles based off if certain bosses are killed, weakened, and the zone is invaded. Yeah, so we had something to do with zone invasion and stuff like that up there, but yeah. It's cool that you remember the Rockhopper Cave. Anybody remember Age of Wushu PvP dungeon system? A group crawled through the dungeon. The game would prompt other players to control minions. So that gets into the play as monster system Mushnar. That it's funny. We're definitely having some discussions on ways to do that type of PvP within and basically sort of bring the dungeons to life a little bit by just sort of merging a couple of concepts there that we had already planned on. So there's a suggestion about making a dungeon with fast travel in it. Could make an event that resets every couple of hours that lets you choose where the portal leads. It's a nice variation on the fast travel. I will add it, Nils. Actions in the dungeon affect fast travel idea listed above. Players can potentially determine destination. If you ever played Yakuza, having a single incredible, difficult, almost impossible enemy that lurks around that you and everyone else has to avoid. You know what? That's one of those things, like, as soon as you say it, you said Yakuza, I thought of, like, what were they called? Were they called the Big Brothers? What were they called in BioShock? Anyways, dungeon zone sweepers. We'll just say that. Make dungeons scary again, not just another thing to raid. Make dungeons scary again is going to go right next to the damn gnome pillow. Is that already a thing? Dungeon Roomba, make a giant ooze monster. Like the cube. Cause yeah, there's a cube in the aqueducts, right? I can't remember if the cube was scary or just another monster though. I thought it was still relatively low level. Dungeon Roomba. Do you remember the goblins had the crazy, like, spinny blade thing that they were peddling in the movie Labyrinth? Big Daddy was a BioShock one. Okay. Thank you. Ready for your Blender tutorial? Oh man, yeah, I haven't even touched it yet. We need to see dynamic difficulty scaling dungeon system if players are grinding out one single dungeon constantly. Other dungeons are left untouched. Dungeons can learn to increase difficulty, fend off. So basically you're talking about dungeons changing based on whether or not they're being used. With instant dungeon, it could be cool to have varying levels of difficulty. Alright, so we'll just put it in here for now. Varying levels of difficulty. I would favor non-instancing to promote ideas like giving less popular dungeons better XP bonuses based on analytics and to foster more opportunities for player interaction. I think one of the big arguments, well, I know there's several, but one of the big ones that comes to mind with regards to community feedback on keeping them open instead of instance is just that sort of random social friction, more player interaction. Mob infighting within dungeons written down. Yeah, that you're right. That's what we have. I thought we had another one though. Thought there was like sort of random event type things. Dungeons with endurance trials like the tribunal event plane of justice. So Dungeons with endurance trials. I guess some of the ring events may even factor into that. Like some of the, I mean, I don't think they actually worked in this way. Maybe? Like Acrylia? What's the damn pillow gnome and why did your suggestion get put there? We were talking about making a gnome-sized body pillow for merch. So you can curl up with a gnome. Put your face on the gnome and fall asleep. All the folks were talking about waifu, waifu gnome pillow. I don't even fully, yeah. Meaningful rare spawns with big loot that are semi-targetable? Define semi. What do you mean by semi-targetable in this one, Gloth? Skills acquired by going deep in the dung can be sold if you run through the dung. Is that literal or metaphorical dung? So if a dungeon goes unused, lower its difficulty over time. Ah, okay. So I see what you're saying. So dungeon population variability based on usage. Unused, example, unused dungeons change in a manner that attracts players. Meaningful rare spawns with big loot that's semi-targetable, region specific to dungeon, like a dungeon with wings area, so it feels more like a real place, not one big loot blobby place. Yeah. No, that I think that part we may have covered. Let me see if there's another addition to what we discussed before that we can write down that sort of takes what you've got there. I think we covered it with regards to just ensuring that they really have like a good world sense. Maybe we didn't say that though. Dungeon maintains a sense of place / solid world sense. Not just a loot lobby. And the previous can lead to unlocks of Big Boss. Waifu Gnome Pillow is the most marketable merch you've ever heard of. Send you 10 please. And you know what? Once we get the basic shape and the stuffing, we can do all sorts of patterns. Collect all 10. Dung equals dungeons. Let me go back up then. I think I thought you were being metaphorical and meaning dungeon. Yeah, so item acquisition, skill and spell acquisition deeper in the dungeons, definitely on the list. Nixify Dev says, I really like certain time-based trials, like if you have a timer of X minutes, and if you complete a certain part of the dungeon within a timer, a special reward. I think we had that listed for the entire dungeon, but not the event. So let me... Dungeon with timer. Let's just say dungeon/event with timer. One of your favorite aspects of Final Fantasy XI was mobs that have been up for a while have an experience bonus. Called camp bonus, diminished the longer the mob was being killed. Another aspect was bonus experience for quick succession and mob kills. There would be a bonus that would be more difficult to keep as the kill timer would go from 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, 15 seconds, etc. Interesting. Let's say FF 11 style bonus for mobs that have been up. Diminished the longer they're camped. But then you say quick succession mob kills, bonus that would be more difficult to keep. But like consistent kill bonus? I don't remember that part of it. Nils just said, oh, so mob deaths will give it chain. So it's kind of like chaining attacks in like a fighting game or whatever. You're just, as long as you're just consistently killing. Oh, interesting. It's kind of like a mini event just in killing. Hitakuro, hello. So, kill speed event. I'm just gonna half-ass this one, but bonus for kills in rapid succession. I cannot wait to take this and throw it in a spell check, which I heard that if I use some other software would happen already. Kill chains. Yep. Anti-spawn camping bonuses to mobs. You guys have overloaded my brain at this point. I'm just done. An hour and 45 minutes of solid suggestions. Yeah, T-Con, if you figure it out, let me know. Dungeon means obligatory storytelling. Yes, story is definitely been nailed in here. But it's a good one. So Nils, you said Dungeon A is level 5, Dungeon B is level 20. Portions of Dungeon A. Yeah. So that I don't know if we wrote it down here, but I'll write it down again. But that is absolutely one of the things that we've been discussing and thinking about. We discussed that a little bit earlier, I think, but in terms of dungeons nested within dungeons. But I think maintaining that philosophy that we're going to have everywhere, where it's areas within dungeons, provide value for a variety of level ranges. Whether that's access to the other dungeons, so like Lower Guk as an example, from Guk to Lower Guk, but even pockets within a dungeon that's we don't go to that area, it's deadly, and then you come back whiles and whiles later. Procedural generated's definitely been hit, and we had a really cool idea. Like, I tend to think of procedurally generated dungeons in one sense, but the idea that you guys had with regards to like a dungeon that's still an open world dungeon, but it changes from week to week or based on certain conditions, and it's still the same dungeon and it's still open. I thought that was an interesting take on it. We need proper implementation, but dungeons based on something like vehicles, like you might be on a dragon for the entire dungeon. We got that when the examples were dragon, ship, and I think I threw minecart in. Are you familiar with Tales from the Yawning Portal D&D campaign? I am now. Sounds like something I want to know about. Yeah, let's not. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Undermountain. I mean, there's so many cool ideas in D&D. I mean, let's be real. So definitely, I'll check it out. It's essentially a bar that has a lift that goes down a dungeon. The lower it goes, the harder it is. Perfect. That's beautiful. Dungeons, mini dungeons that serve as passage between two or more overworld zones. That's a different take on what we have above. Let me get that. Dungeons / mini dungeons that serve as a passage between two or more overland / overworld zones. Got it. Oh, nice. Oh man, all right. All right. So I feel like we've I can relax for a second. I think it'd be cool, really cool to unlock class defining abilities through specific dungeon events, bosses. Imagine Necro have to unlock Feign Death through some sort of trial. So I'm trying to think if that's fairly covered in what we wrote above. I'll just do it again. Events and bosses provide class defining abilities. Well, and it could be that the quest leading up to getting the class defining ability is what provides the opportunity to trigger the event or the boss, right? I think Nick, you've been in favor of some ideas like that. Ooh, artwork. Let me look. Oh man, that's wonderful. Here, let me I'm so distracted by these little beetles flying at this light that I have over here. I'm sorry. I've gotten more distracted in the last little bit. After being a young man in Alabama and Florida, whenever there's bugs flying around, I just think cockroaches, palmetto bugs. That looks fun. That is such a fun picture. They're like, hell yeah. Everybody's having a good time. I'm definitely going to look into it. I think I've shown you. I think I've shown this before. The Undermountain stuff. I have this in storage. It's just such a crazy crazy ton of dungeons all networked together. So is this from a newer campaign? Let me put that in another tab over here as well so I don't lose it. 2 years ago. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm pretty out of the loop on anything that's like 5e and in the last few years, to be honest. Some of the women that I worked with at my last company were running a pretty regular campaign, but I never really had a chance to hop in and check it out. Always had to get home to Ziggy's. D&D homebrew and like what is it, oh man, I forgot the name of it already, but Ham's really tuned me into like the, what is it, like gaming renaissance. It's like the sort of retro tabletop movement that, you know, it's been a thing for a while. Oh, hi Flambook. So yeah. All right, guys. We just did 2 solid hours of ideas. So I'm going to read through some of these since we've slowed down a little bit. I'm going to read through some of these so you can see what you potentially missed and we can see if there's any gaps. And I mean, I was not prepared for the level of participation that has happened tonight. So humongous thank you. That was badass. That was amazing. I absolutely did not see this one coming. So I just kind of wrote it. Man, this text or notepad is so bright that it's making my eyes look weird in the monitor. Sorry about that. All right, so we're gonna read through this. There's just random notes in the beginning. This means we gamers are getting upset with the way dungeons have been going. Or there's a lot of, maybe there's, you guys reference a lot of other game dungeons and stuff as well. There's a program called Notepad++. You can enable dark mode, but then I'll feel like I'm a fake programmer. I feel like I'm faking the funk on programming. But you know what? Top note. Notepad++. All right, that's the top note of this. All right, sense of danger. Dungeons need a sense of danger. Dark mode doesn't look, go with Sublime text next. No, I've actually had that before when I was pretending to be a programmer. I was trying to learn JavaScript a few years ago. Brex, what's going on? We just had a 2-hour session of people throwing dungeon ideas around in chat. It was crazy. All right, so I'm going to read back through some of these notes. Dungeons got to have a sense of danger. Want to have crawling with friends. Not know what to expect. Traps, locked or illusionary doors. Have to consider aggro management. Random spawn named mobs and bosses. A few safe spots. Reliance on other players. Distinct boss abilities. More risk versus reward as you go deeper. A sense of internal progression. Interesting points of interest. Rooms to sit in. Death touch. Mob variety. Constant tension. Directional / range based abilities should weigh on the room / tunnel design. Architecture that tells the story. Some of the best dungeons also have raid targets in them. Dungeon story and lore. Non-linear dungeons like BRD and WoW. Saturated hues. Progressive spawn cycles. And with that was essentially spawns lead to new spawns. Right, so get a rare that can lead to a different type of rare that leads to something else. Death drops a la Blackburrow. Use of height, verticality, randomized puzzles similar to Breath of the Wild puzzles. Dungeon events with dungeon / events with a timer, bonus for beating the time. I'll put that in there. I'll put that in there right now, Brex. Nice. Dark tunnels. And you mean no light works, right? Just, can I bring my own light, or does no light work? Something to add when it comes to appearance and more mist and vision obstruction in dark tunnels. There we go. We'll put those together. Dark tunnels, mists, and vision obstruction. Absolutely no light. Noted. Absolutely no light. Trapdoor that drops foes on the party. No fun? Alright, so how about this? We'll add this in here. Some with absolutely no light. Others. Some light. Wow, just came in and all I would have said is already on a list. It's a great list. Uptown Coyote. Miss and vision obstruction. Trapdoor drops foes on the party. Skill-based platforming can fail and have to redo. Points rather than pure RNG. So a la Eldon. Oh, I would seriously do Whisper VO for you. This freaking beetle almost got me. Let's see. Interesting use of the environment. Water, lava, etc. Later on we'll have slime and ice, so don't worry. Long, sprawling dungeons with safe spots here and there, usually punctuating branching areas. Lots of underwater zones. Loving SMR. Heard that before. It's so weird to me. Minion mobs prep you for boss mechanics. So it's that wonderful, like, Nintendo designers were always so good at this. You know, having those contextual clues sort of inform you as to what the boss is going to require of you later on. Oh, you've just discovered bombs. I wonder what it'll be used for. One-way zone ins and specific zone out locations. Having a way to leave at the end instead of backtracking. Key quest components dropped in the dungeons. Refueling points with interactable objects that give a minor boon to recovery. Super tiny dungeon that you have to be a gnome or shrink for to even get in. Let alone walk around. Dungeon reverse. Hop in, kill the boss, and then you have to fight your way back out. Or just hop in and then you're kind of got a very early commitment point. A la Droga. Day-night cycle style pop changes for the dungeon. So the stuff that we've been talking about doing with outdoor zones, also do that indoors. Force slow progression, but not meaningless grind. Little philosophical note. Increased mob patrols or stronger mobs in areas that players commonly camp/farm. Interesting mix of interior and exterior. Examples were Kazakh Black Burrow, Unrest. Do you guys have any other ones that aren't on this list that meet that criteria? Can you think of any? Mazes. Well, just for flavor. Labyrinths. Keying/attunement to other dungeons leads to tiered gearing up/progression. Sorry, to enter dungeon. Summon points in the dungeon to backfill the group, etc. So essentially like call the hero or whatever, just built into the zone. Doors that require interaction with buttons, toggles, switches, etc. in other parts of the dungeon. Points of no return within the dungeon. Dungeons with towns like Runny Eye. Crushbone. Perfect. It's funny, they're all old world. Plaintive Mischief has a convoluted interior in the house, an open courtyard and hedge maze. You know what? I'm just not as familiar as I should be with Plaintive Mischief. Mistmore. Nice. Old world again. King Attunement did that. Key codes or keys that change over time, which drop off of mobs. Dungeon should be full of mysteries. It takes multiple visits, sessions to unlock everything. Summon points in the dungeon to backfill the group. Did I skip ahead earlier or did we do that twice? Yeah, either way. Dungeons that you cannot gate or port out of. Doors that require interacting with. Weird, did I jump around or am I like, is my brain just frying at this point? Yeah, I think I jumped around, but then I guess I missed a couple before. There's a zone called Stonehive. I remember Stonehive. Or I remember hearing about Stonehive. I don't know that I actually know Stonehive. I think maybe somebody showed me Stonehive at one point. Dungeons that should expand the world's lore in some way. Dungeons near under major ports and cities. Merchants in the dungeons. And I think that was, maybe we do it 3 times. We've got dungeons with towns like Runny Eye, merchants and dungeons. Kind of goes together with this. But then we also talked about visiting NPCs that serve as merchants. Kind of like you find other adventurers in the dungeon. What's up, Orc Boy? Orc Boy, we are just wrapping up 2 hours of ideas from chat on what makes a cool dungeon. Dungeons with faction impact. Example, live versus dead Guk. Permanent bonus of some sort after beating or progressing past some point in the dungeon. Permadeath. Permadeath super loot dungeon or just really constrained CR rules. Outdoor dungeons. Example, Gorge of King's Orb. Dungeons within dungeons. Bad dungeons are okay too. That was really kind of someone to provide some emotional support to any dungeons. If you're out there tonight and you're feeling a little inadequate, you're feeling a little sad, you're like, no one really visits me. No one has plunged themselves into my minds in quite a while. Maybe I need an experience bonus. You know what? Don't feel bad about yourself. You're okay too. Multiple entrances. Active groups in different parts of the dungeon trigger an event. So that was if you've got people doing stuff here, and the other place, and then something happens. Kieran, this was tons of fun. Thank you for being here. You have a good rest of your day. Mobs recognize a threat if you stay too long and they run away. Other NPCs come in, invade, set up camp, and provide unique benefits, quests, merchants, etc., or make it harder. Secret, alternate, and or keyed entrances. Okay, I have my parentheses in the wrong place. Consumable, spawnable, placeable dungeons from quest items. Dungeon in which you can't go back, only forward. Dungeon in which healing does damage. Damage does healing. Requires different classes, i.e. need to res an NPC that gives you something. Lore for specific classes, races. Example, boss whispers to you or reacts differently based on who you are. Lots of hidden stuff to detect or sense. Mobs with dynamic locations, so it has a chance to spawn in different groups. Camps. At least one procedurally generated dungeon. Maybe it gets destroyed and respawns differently each week or whatever. Different branches that can only be unlocked by a specific class. Play with rewards to get a mix of classes helping each other. Dungeon or POI. And I think in that one the example was like, you know, maybe a warrior's got to bring a mage to cast something on a door to be able to get through. Dungeon or POI that requires multiple people to do something at once. Examples: stand on pressure plates to summon boss or trigger event. Trade skill or other skill interactions that provide access to certain areas or bosses. Jewel crafter makes a gem that fits into a statue, or you repair a bridge, as examples. Requires another item to reveal enemies or loot, like a magic lantern. Or, and this was for an idea for a kids game that I tossed out a while back, was ghost glasses. It is a much cuter game, but it was part of discussing with the design team for another project. Just ways to use data and minor asset variations to basically get more bang for your buck. Dungeon that requires you to be drunk. Pressure plates that require big races to stand on. Let me go back up. And I'll put it right under here. Pressure plates that require you bring a fatty. Or even two. Dungeon that requires you to be drunk. I still don't remember if that was in real life or in game, but we can do both. Tough, a super tough dungeon provides interesting ports as a reward, or secret tunnels to interesting places. You can make any race, requires a specific weight, gnome, etc. Fair enough. We'll go up there and change that. Hello. Cubby plate for gnomes. Or whatever. That's how I remember stuff. I just put in or whatever. This is starting to remind me of Die Hard 3 with 2 Jugs riddle. I don't remember it. Now I've got to watch it. My wife's German, so we watch Die Hard 1 and root for the Germans. They never seem to win. No matter how many times we watch it. Boss / event in which player needs to be defended by a group as they do a thing. Certain spells, abilities, etc. that are only available by venturing deep into the dungeon can't be sold. Additional cosmetic options based off stuff listed above. Hans Gruber needs an origin story movie. Man, I could actually see if that movie wasn't as old as it is, them whipping that out. Shortcuts you have to unlock or that are one-way-ish, as in Dark Souls games. Okay, let me add that. Shortcuts that are unlocked. That's actually, it's interesting. The shortcut aspect of an unlock. So having a key not just to access, but just to make it a shortcut. Excuse me. That previous sentence was all sorts of weird, sorry. Having a key that unlocks shortcut as opposed to just pure access. That's super handy. I like it. Shave a little time off. Makes it feel a little bit more epic. Especially helps if we then have higher level stuff buried in dungeons. So then, you know, you're higher level, you don't want to have to go through everybody's camps and shit. Training through bedroom, blah, blah, blah. You can just skip all of it. So, shortcuts that are unlocked. Or are one way. as in Dark Souls. Additional cosmetic options based off the stuff listed above. Quasi dungeons that are extensions or areas within an existing outdoor zone. No rent items used to advance within the dungeons. Roleplay dungeons. Mount type mechanics in dungeons. Dragging, cannons on a ship, minecarts. Dungeon fills with toxic gas. Time-based conditional variability. How about a dungeon plays like an elevator? Like one of those old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Nintendo games? I'll put that up here with this one. Minecart. Elevator. Mobile app clickbait ad dungeon. So keys, lava, other stuff. You know what we're talking about there? You pull the key. You don't want to burn the dude. You just want to get the gems. The chance of being devoured and corpse rotting. What is your idea of risks that make you gamble at all? Oh, we did have a permadeath dungeon listed up here. I want to add the corpse rotting. All right, we're coming back down here. So, penalties for incorrectly solving a puzzle or some other condition. Mob infighting within a dungeon. Evolving dungeons, like bringing Minas Tirith back to life. Gathering dungeon, like Stardew's mines. Include rare nodes and materials in dungeons. Very remote dungeons that are hard to get to and return from. Expedition style. Zone-wide debuffs and buffs. Siege attack or defend for the dungeon. You said Nectropos Castle from EQ2 has a great design story and includes a lot of secret shortcuts. Let me go back up to shortcuts. Where were we? And then we go back down here to tight dungeons, old school EQ, low tide, tidal dungeon entrance, low tide, tidal dungeon entrance based on lunar cycle, high tide to reach it, and tidal changes. Change population. Slippery surfaces like slime and ice. Dungeon size has an impact on certain weapons or spell types. So I threw that in there, but the suggestion at the time was like, you can't swing a big sword. You got to use a little sword. Dungeons, yep. Temperature on or other conditions require items to survive. Yeah, there were a few of these that I mentioned. Stood out as things that I've either seen in watching the Pantheon stuff or linked to some of those systems. Joppa if you're still around, so pretty cool to see that stuff. PvP dungeons. It's such a fun idea, PvP dungeons. Items that drop in the dungeon are lootable. I threw that on there. So you go into the dungeon, you can get the loot, but if you get caught before you get out by another player, they can just take that loot off you. That loot is lootable off of corpses in that dungeon, if you know what I mean. Two teams compete to kill final boss is another approach there. Assassination or other stealth mission style dungeons, and your ability to be stealthy impacts final rewards. Monster fall damage is a general note. Indiana Jones as an example, whipping across crevasses, dodging darts and boulders, etc. Bosses slash pop cycles based on if the certain bosses are killed or weakened and the zone is invaded. Actions in the dungeon affect fast travel. Idea listed above. Players can potentially determine destination. Dungeon zone sweepers. The dungeon Roomba. Or a Big Daddy. Varying levels of difficulty. I think that one was linked to in the same dungeon. Dungeons with endurance trials. An example might be like the ring events, where depending on how long you can last, it's some. I could have. Didn't we not make an event or two that was like that? Because it was just a natural. Gets more difficult, but rewards increase in value as you kill a thing. You're gonna loot it, and yeah. So dungeon population variability based on usage. Unused dungeons change in a manner that attracts players. Let's see. PvP dungeons, amazing idea. Something that happened a lot in UO and could be done in a similar way to Dark Zones and Division. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we'll definitely keep that on the list. Rather than towns being safe areas and top world being PvP, towns in open world are safe, dungeons are PvP. Makes sense to you? Or have one or two of them in there just for flavor's sakes, right? That said, we do want to do some PvP in some certain dungeons with play as a monster. We definitely want to try that out. Dungeons where you can raise faction with the inhabitants and PvP other players who are killing. Yep. So, Nick, do you want me to write that down? Since that's already on our list, though. What about indirect PvP dungeons where they race to get to treasure at the end with the ability to spring traps on other players to hinder other group? For instance, the two groups enter different entrances dungeon along the way. One to treasure team solves puzzle flood corridor. Very complex. Well, I'm gonna put it on here because we're not saying no to anything, but definitely I think that you know what? Again, I just proved myself wrong. That doesn't require instancing. I think it works. The easiest way to do it would be to be instanced, but it's not necessarily required. Indirect PvP groups actions affect other groups within the zone. Could link to race for loot. Where do we leave off here? Previous note can lead to unlock of big boss. Ensure that dungeon maintains a sense of place, solid world sense, not just a loot lobby. Final Fantasy XI style bonus for mobs that have been up, diminish the longer they've been camped. Kill speed event, bonus for kills in rapid succession. Kill chaining. Different areas within dungeons provide value for a variety of different level ranges. Note to check out Tales from the Yawning Portal. Dungeons, mini dungeons that serve as a passage between two or more overworld zones. And events and bosses provide class-defining abilities. Indirect, we just had this one. PvP isn't at the heart of these group-focused games. The world should force players to come together. So you would suggest there'd be more collaborative elements. Haven't played a game where you're afraid of the world in a very long time. Well, I think, you know, we and others are definitely working to make that dream more of a reality. And you know what? We're just thinking of the people that have announced. I was just thinking about this because I've got some former coworkers and friends that are at another company that hasn't been discussed yet. I've never heard their name discussed, but I know they're working on the game. They've staffed up a good bit. They've got some really talented people. They're in Bend, Oregon, and I'm curious. I'm curious when they announce, if they're not going to announce an MMO, because they've got a lot of MMO talent on that team. The company's name is Mutant Arm, out of Bend, Oregon now, but some former EQ2 people, some former DCUO people, some really good folks. Has anyone come up with a Chamber of Secrets type thing, a hidden room that can randomly appear? Hidden room that can randomly appear is not on the list. And it is now. Check your latest one. Oh, I just went to Slack. You're not talking about Slack, are you? Are you talking about the dungeons where you can raise faction with the inhabitants and PvP other players who are killing? Breck says, in some dungeon zones, instead of NPCs killing you, you become imprisoned or exiled to a specific location. Okay, let's put that in there. Instead of being killed, you're captured or exiled to a specific location. And I spelled specific like psionics. Specific location. And boom, I just copy pasted that one, Nick. Yeah, that was the one I had asked because we had discussed it a bunch in our private time, whether or not you wanted me to write it down or if but I just copy paste it. We're good. Man, all right. So that was 2 hours of really, really fun stuff. What do you guys think? Anything on here you weren't expecting? Any ideas stand out for you? So my thing is, I'm really gonna look at this and maybe organize it a little bit, figure out exactly what we're gonna do other than have it for ourselves. But I love that Joppa was in here for this one. Chris, you were like, clip that. I'm gonna come back. I'll send it to you in Discord. We want to know what your top 3 favorites are. That's a tough one. That is a tough one. Top 3. So some of this stuff I just, like, if I had a top 20, there's so many things where I'm like, it would just be nice to always sort of consider these, or equal parts validation, inspiration. Yep. Yeah, that's the nice thing, isn't it? When you look at it and you're like, all right, that's cool. That's in line with, you know, stuff that we've actually invested in. It's funny when the Indiana Jones one came up, Joppa, the like lashing across crevasses and stuff like that. I don't know if you'd popped up by then, but I was definitely thinking of you guys. And then all the environmental stuff, environmental hazards and things like that, I think are awesome. But yeah, so top 3. I think there are a few that just stand out as like really fun ones that I want to try just to see if it works or not. So some of the stuff that we've talked about with regards to day-night cycle and things of that nature, providing both access to and variability within a zone. I like those a lot. Load of questions, a big list. Move along. Okay, thank you. I was about to say, there's so much shit in here, I don't want to have to try to pick 3. Thank you for letting me off the hook on that one. Drop text file on the Slack, you'll categorize it later. Badass. The indirect PvP stuff and other PvP, like at the end of the day, I think it was, who was it just said it? Let me scroll up a bit. Maybe it was T-Con. It could be that some of that stuff, like the plays a monster or some of the potential factional PvP or not random, but a couple of dungeons that provide like PvP options or whatever. It could be that just it does prove to not be a fit, but it seems so worthwhile to try it out. Don't base the game. Don't change the game based off your opinion. Oh, don't worry. No, don't worry. We'll definitely be doing this based off our opinions. But to the point, I do want to, you know, put out credit where credit may be due in the sense of like, I guess do it in advance where it's like, it could be that, yeah, you're right, it doesn't fit. But these are ideas where it's like, it's really, I think, worth, especially if we're a smaller game and we, you know, are a little bit more niche and smaller audience. I think there's opportunity for us to screw around with some of this stuff, especially if it's low invest systems or just database tweaks or changes and shit like that. It's worth experimenting with. So some of the things with the zones, population changing in a kind of an event-based nature, or it's very hard to pull off, but doing things where, you know, zone usage or lack thereof can lead to some variation that pulls people back in, that kind of automates the process that we did with some of the zone revamps back when I was on EQ. That'd be interesting to kind of figure out. Generally speaking, just at the end of the day, if we can get that old classic EQ1 feel, I noticed a lot of the examples that we're using, and it may just be the data is biased by the audience. You know, we've got a lot of people in here that love Classic or found us through P99 or whatever. But when I look at some of the examples of like things that stand out to me as cool, you know, when we look at this interesting mix of interior and exterior, like so many of them wound up being like classic zones. And the water, lava, etc. Interesting use of environment. You know, I don't know about you, but I immediately think of older zones when I think of water, or older zones when I think of lava. Even though, that was only 2, 3. Dungeons with towns like Runny Eye, right? Points of no return within a dungeon. Again, I think we have Drogon here somewhere. PvP done with low risk, high reward, can be successful. Basically, all these popular battle royale games today are doing it. Yeah, but I think they also have the benefit of that is core to their identity. But actually, I think I know what you're saying. Popsicle differently. the opportunity to experience some low risk PvP. It's funny, that was an argument that was put out there and not very well received by the people internally that it was being pitched to when we were looking at turning, basically reskinning PlanetSide to make a mercenary game. And one of the things that we wanted to do was include AI to allow people that were not as good at PvP, but still within the context of that big open world or bigger, you know, huger combined arm battles and stuff, to give some opportunity for people that weren't as skilled to have something to do and feel like they're contributing. So yeah, I think there are a lot of people out there that like to be in the context, but know that they're never going to be the last person making the crazy puzzle dungeon fucking tower to, you know, win the battle royale. But and I noticed that's why I like team-based, like the bigger team-based, better than like the small squad or one-on-one. But anyway, I'm rambling. Outdoor dungeons. So we have Gorge of King Zorb. I'm trying to think of some other zones that count as outdoor dungeons. Yeah, I did say PlanetSide. I'll try to get in at least once a night for you, Nick. Koa said you can instance lower skilled PvPers with other players at the same level. I think one of the things that's different when you do have like the bigger groups of PvPers though, where you've got mixed skill levels, but it's not all versus all, and it is more team based, is it kind of provides that same feel of like seeing the badass, being able to be in a world with the more skilled people and see them around. You're kind of like, you're maybe a little bit more mousy and behind the front line. But one of the things I loved about Fortnite, I mean, Fortnite did so many good things in this regard. Fortnite, there was almost that like, there was almost always that front line of like people doing wild shit, and you would see them like building up weird things and, you know, gliding in and just getting kills, and it's like, it's nice. So let's see. I actually use the Aviac Treehouse in South Carolina as inspiration for outdoor dungeons quite often. It makes a lot of sense. So let's add that on here. So we'll put on KFC and outdoor mini dungeons. Oh, there you go. Great minds thinking alike. Well, and then there was like the Frog Lock KFC in, where was it? Was it Swamp of No Hope, or that one? We went there together, Nick, and it seemed like such a weird, underused environment. And I think we spent some time walking around there trying to figure out why the hell it wasn't used more. And I think maybe we determined it was just the Kunark content problem. Like, it seemed like Kunark could have just done an entire another expansion that was barely any new art, and it was just more data jammed into Kunark. That one had pathing issues. Oh yeah, and it probably still suffered from the Z-axis issue. Check notes, that is a good point. Pathing and Z-axis. KFC's got crazy Z-axis issues as well, right? Or is that fixed now because Z-axis is fixed in the game? I just remember that used to be super, don't do it. I'd get yelled at by the lead environment artist, Dave. He was a great guy, but he would always like lose his mind when it's like, we want to build a tower. No. But then he wound up being so amped on the idea of creating a pirate ship for LOI. Like, the only reason why that wound up being like a 5-zone expansion instead of 4 was he got so amped on the idea of creating Hate's Fury that he broke his own rules and like tried to figure out how to not have Z-axis issues and all this shit. It was really cool. I really like the areas too, like the Centaur Camp was kind of one of the first ones maybe I ran into, but then we had the various giant camps in Kunark and stuff like that, where it's kind of a little mini outpost or whatever, but it's really just a big camp. Especially that one that's kind of like a big wooden camp on stilts in Kunark. But yeah, all right, good points there. Excuse me. Cool, guys. All right. Well, I think I'm going to hit save. We've got this list. I honestly did not expect this. I know I said this before, but now we've got this big list and we've got to be like, we're going to go through it and really pull some ideas out of it. I can't thank you enough. My earlier comment was tongue-in-cheek, but also kind of legit. Joppa and anybody else, honestly, hopefully folks that are in here that are, you know, working on stuff or looking at ideas or whatever, got a nice brainstorm session out of this as well. But yeah. And like you said, it's nice, sort of equal parts like validation and inspiration. It's very cool. I did not expect us to spend 2 hours rattling off ideas. I honestly, no bullshit, I spent some time earlier today making sure I kind of was prepared to run Lantern. And because I was like, I fully expected that we would have to, like, I'd be in here and like the question would be, so what do you guys like about zones? And then, you know, there'd be maybe a response or two, and then I'd be like, all right, well, here, let's look at Guck now.